So welcome back to Case Western Reserve University, Siegal Lifelong Learning. I'm Ted Evans, the Executive Director, and this is our final day of this series of Great Institutions of Cleveland. We have another wonderful panel. Before we get into that, I'm going to have my staff just briefly, because I think it's very important for them to come up. You can stand up, please, and come up. Daphne, come up. So this is part of the staff, and they are key to making sure this stuff goes off well. This was a heavy lift, and not just this series of events, but we do this all the time. So this is part of the group. We have Felicia Westbrooks, who's not here, Lorraine Nelson, who is not here. They also do a tremendous amount to support this team. I'm going to very quickly hand the mic and let them introduce yourselves and just tell them what you do for Siegal, because I think it's important.
Okay, put us on the spot. I'm Andrea Rubin. I am the Director of Marketing and General Studies Programs, and I've been here with Siegal for, I think, just over 8 years, and I love what we do here, and I love seeing all of your faces here with us over and over again for all of our different programming, so thanks for being here.
I'm Hallie Bravo. I am the program manager, so I help manage all of your wonderful programs. And I'm usually the person who answers the phone when you call. So when you call to register, you might be talking to me. And I'm happy to register everybody over the phone, so no worries if you're having tech issues.
Hello, everybody, and good morning. I'm Daphna Ben Yosef, the Jewish Studies Director here at Siegal. I've been with Siegal for over a year now, and I'm very happy to say that our Jewish Studies program has a lot to offer. So if you're interested in Jewish Studies or anything related to it, please go on our website, and we will be very happy to see you in our programs. Thank you.
So thanks. Yeah, this does not happen without that group. So I wanted to make sure you got a chance to formally meet them. I know you see them here and there. Good news for you, because I did say this is the last session, but we will be bringing back Great Institutions of Cleveland, looking at various institutions. Andrea and I and other folks are meeting to determine what the next cadence is, who it is, but we're really excited to bring more programming like this, and again, our other programming, which is just as important. So this group that we have today, these three distinguished guests that we have, again, I've had the pleasure of spending time with each one of them. You're going to have fun today, just like we've had the last few times. I'll leave the introductions to John. But with that, then, Andrea, I will, are you going to introduce John, or would you like me to just?
Well, John goes without meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, so John's historian at Western Reserve Historical Society, as you all know. But one thing we're always very conscious of, we are streaming, we are recording this. So this will live on in forever, right? Perpetuity, right? So folks will be watching this and wondering who we are. So we make sure we cover all the bases with each one of these sessions. But having said that, I will transfer hosting duties to you, John, and there you go. Thanks.
Thank you, Ted. Well, it's my pleasure to formally introduce our participants today. I'm actually beginning to feel like I'm part of the collection at the Western Reserve Historical Society, but let's not go on with that. Aaron Petersall is Executive Director of the Maltz Museum and a museum professional with over 20 years of experience advancing cultural institutions as community-centered spaces. Very important statement. He has held leadership roles at the Cleveland Museum of Art, Minneapolis Institute of Arts, and the Clark Institute Art Institute, as well as United Way of Greater Cleveland. Aaron is committed to keeping museums relevant, accessible, and inclusive, fostering meaningful connections through engagement, education, and collaboration. Megan Likens-Reich, early in the morning, became MoCA Cleveland's Cole Executive Director in 2022 after serving as interim executive director since 2020. Member of the museum since 2004. That gets right to the beginning, doesn't it? Yep. She has led strategic initiatives that have strengthened MoCA's community relevance and national visibility. Roy has organized over 30 exhibits, authored numerous publications, and advanced the museum's commitment to equity and inclusion. She holds degrees from Penn State and Case Western Reserve University and lives near Cleveland with her family. Sonia Winter has served as the 10th director of the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. She's been there since 2018. She led its $150 million transformation project to reimagine the museum's campus and exhibits. How many of you have seen that? Fantastic. Previously, she held senior development roles at Columbia University and Case Western Reserve University. Cleveland native, an award-winning leader. Winter has been recognized by Crain's Cleveland Business, Cleveland Magazine, and Smart Business for her impact on the region and the museum field. This is an incredible panel today. They've all been incredible. This is very interesting. What I'm looking at, my usual shtick here, is this is a mixture of the old and the new. We're going from institutionally speaking, and we're looking. Well, that just killed the shtick. That's fine. But you know, Cleveland Museum of Natural History goes back to the Arkites, not the Ark, but the Arkites, which in 1830s, Leonard Case and his friends had a little home near Public Square where they collected specimens and stuffed animals and whatever else, and that eventually would morph into, in 1920, the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. So you are the winner for the oldest institution, really. Going back to the Ark, we'll talk about Noah later. But then, you know, the other thing is that I'm looking at MoCA, which traces back to 1968, Marge Talalay, and, you know, sort of an alternative museum for Cleveland, cutting edge, new art, experimental in terms of what you're doing. You know, it was the new gallery. It became the Cleveland Center of Contemporary Art in 1984, and in 2011, the new facility at the Triangle, which is a fantastic building. It's free, right? Art museums in Cleveland are free, and so that is wonderful. And then the Maltz is one of the newest institutions in Cleveland in 2005, located away from the circle, but we've been talking about the juxtaposition. All three organizations are really, in my mind, they're linked by dealing with major topics that are sometimes controversial. We're looking at evolution and the environment at Cleveland Museum of Natural History, multicultural understanding and Stop the Hate at the Maltz Museum, and MoCA has been experimenting with new art forms continuously. And you know, some people don't think that's edgy, but it is edgy for some people. And so we're looking at changing museums. So that's the end of my introduction. It's time for you to do. So I'm going to ask each of you to talk about what brought you to where you are, not here today, but to your jobs. And so give us a little bit of biography for us beyond that little shtick that I read, okay? And who wants to be first?
I'll go first since I'm the longest tenured, since I've been there for 21 years, which surprises people. I came to MoCA as an intern. Funny quick story, I was doing an internship abroad, and my parents had moved to Cleveland, and I had finished my undergrad, and with all the hubris of a 21-year-old, I emailed the director of the museum and was like, hi, I'm a person who is looking for opportunities. And for whatever reason, she didn't throw the email in the trash and forward it to the senior curator, who in fact was looking for an intern. And so when I came back to Cleveland from that, I interned with Kristen Chambers, who hands down was one of the best curators MoCA has ever had. This is in the early 2000s. And I ended up going to Case for my graduate work and was offered a curatorial fellowship at MoCA after doing a fellowship at the Cleveland Museum of Art in 2004. Mm-hmm. So I started in 2004 as a curatorial fellow. And it was a wonderful position because there was an exhibition program that was happening at MoCA called the Wendy L. Moore Exhibition Series, where a woman under the age of 30 was given her first solo museum show. And then they paired that with this Tremaine curatorial fellowship. And so when I started, I was 23. They had awarded it to a wonderful ceramist from CIA named Alicia Basinger, who had just graduated from undergrad, and she was like 22. And we got in her studio, and we looked at each other, and we were like, are you serious that they're gonna give us this responsibility? She's like, I have to make work for a show. I was like, I have to write about that and like make a catalog. So we got it together, and it was the first project I did for MoCA, and obviously I've never left. I've worked I developed the education department, formalized it, became the director of education in 2007 while I was pursuing my doctoral work at Case, which I never completed. It's okay, you can do that apparently. And then I kind of just continued to work through different roles at MoCA until my current one. I have kind of my commitment is really around the intersection of art and artists and audiences. So I see our museum as an access point, which helps audiences understand themselves and others through the lens of art and connect with artists who are critical to our society. So my work has always been in that intersection, and I'm deeply committed to the way in which contemporary art resonates for audiences of all types. And so a lot of the shows that I've done, and in fact, I've worked with John in the past on interpretation, really have intended to take contemporary art into the lives of Clevelanders and people who are visiting and make it relevant for each of them. So that is my passion. MoCA continues to always change. We have no collection. The only thing we own is the building. And that's really exciting because we're always evolving. So our mission is Art Now in Progress. We just updated it, 4 words, favorite thing ever. We are always moving. We are always evolving, and that keeps it exciting. So it keeps it interesting for me, always.
Cool.
Well, I came to museums accidentally, quite honestly. I finished my degree in psychology, and I followed my wife to Minneapolis. She's an actor, and Minneapolis has a wonderful acting scene. And so we arrived in Minneapolis, and I was trying to figure out what to do, and I had always visited museums when I was young. It was an integral part of my childhood, and there was an entry-level opening at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, and I was so excited to jump in. I applied, I got the job. And then I had the opportunity to get a promotion that allowed me to oversee the area that I was working in, which was the visitor experience area. The Minneapolis Institute of Arts at that time had decided to do a major expansion of its galleries and to re-envision every single gallery and how visitors navigate the space. And it's just coincidental that I was there at the time. I was afforded this ability. We got to work with great organizations like the Target Corporation, who brought in their team and talked about how people navigate a space, how people engage with different areas. And it really opened my eyes to what you could do with the museum and how you engage with people. Now, I had the great fortune to work in many positions at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. It seemed to be like a snowball effect. I kept on gathering new experiences in marketing, in development, but the project was done. We had completed it, and it's wonderful. It's fantastic. So I was looking for what's next. I'm not very good at just sitting in a place and waiting for stuff to happen or maintaining. So I was recruited to go to the Clark Art Institute in Massachusetts in the Berkshires, where this is 2008. They're doing an expansion project. The director there used to work at the Minneapolis Institute of Art, so we kind of knew each other a bit. I was inspired by his vision, but it was 2008. So we had opened a conservation lab there that was brand new. As soon as I came in, that was one of the first things we did. But then the whole project got put on hold. It's 2008 because the economy is starting to crash. Nobody really wants to put a shovel in the ground and start a new project. Okay, I have 2 children that are toddlers and my wife. I brought them to the Berkshires, to the mountains, and now what am I going to do? Fortunately, Cleveland Museum of Art had already started digging their holes, and they had already started taking down their buildings. So I got into conversation with a number of folks at the Cleveland Museum of Art, And I was very fortunate then in 2010 to join that team. And at the time, there was a security office there was the director's office, and then there was my office. All the other offices were located downtown. So I got to start at the very beginning of the construction phase of the Cleveland Museum of Art. And there, I got to further hone my museum skills, further understand how people navigate a space, further understand interpretation, marketing, development, and I was there all through that project as well. So what's next? Well, my boss at the Cleveland Museum of Art, August Napoli, went to the United Way and said, you really got to help out at the United Way. We have some important work to do here. So I went over there. And I spent 6 wonderful years, and I got to see a part of Cleveland that I really didn't know existed, having worked at the Cleveland Museum of Art, and I really got involved in the community. We did some great work at the United Way. What's next? The Maltz Museum. I was very fortunate to be selected as their executive director, and it really married the experience that I've had with museums with also the social justice work that the United Way does. So fortunate to be there. I've been there now for 15 months, and we're starting to look at what the next 20 years of that museum looks like.
Wow.
So I actually am not a Cleveland native, although I married one, and you know that. Wherever you are, they all want to come back like salmon. So I just want to make sure that's clear. So I was actually born in the Philippines. My father was in the Army, but I was born at Clark Air Force Base, which at the time was the largest Air Force base in the world. So I moved 14 times before high school. So that really, I was always the new kid. But I grew up in a family that loved learning, and every Wednesday night we would go to the library and we would all read. And we'd all go to different corners of the library, and we would pick out books and think about things. And I always loved the idea of travel and bringing things to life. And I think that really started my love of just being exposed to arts and culture. But I didn't grow up in a family that went to museums. I went to museums as a kid that as part of field trips, but I never went on a regular basis. And I think that that's why I'm so passionate about exposing all families to arts and culture and having them have that opportunity to make it as affordable as possible for families. And because of the Maltz Foundation, we're able to allow and welcome families from Cleveland, East Cleveland, and 5 inner ring suburbs to come to the museum now on Saturdays and Sundays for free. And my mother was a widow at 37, so I worked my way through college and law school. And then I had the opportunity to work at Tier 1 research institutions. And that's where my passion came. I was able to work with Nobel laureates. I was at the Lamont Doherty Observatory, the Earth Institute. I met seismologists, remarkable talent that you see at Tier 1 institutions. And we're so lucky to have places like Case Western and others around and in this community. And I took my children, though, to the museum all the time. In fact, every Saturday morning we would get up and say, what do you want to do? And my son would say, I want to go to the dinosaur museum. And my daughter was really into birds. And so I have always looked at the museum and the work that I do as a patron, as a visitor. And so that's really important to the work and my passion about what is it like when you're 5 years old and you walk into a place like the Natural History Museum. And it's a privilege to see that the children are in charge. And there are very few places in the world, especially right now, where children feel empowered and in charge. So that is truly a privilege. And my colleagues and I see that every day. What can we do to make the visitor experience as positive as possible? And not only, have this inquiry-based methodology where you come into the museum, you learn, you have fun, and you want to return because you're asking questions, not only about about the world around you, but about yourself. And that's what I think arts and culture does. It really changes you, not only your perspective on the world, but who you are as an individual and how you want to contribute.
Yeah, we've heard this from almost all of our panelists, and I'm going to go to a question that's not on the list. What are the biggest issues that you're dealing with, problems within the museums nowadays? If you would pick one, just one. I tossed this up for you. That's my next question about funding. But
Moving on.
Bring it on. Okay.
No, I mean, the funding landscape has changed dramatically through COVID, and is, of course, right now fraught even more with the changes happening at the federal level. So things are fragile, and people are changing their modes of giving, how they're, and how often, and to what generations that are coming up under. The boomers and the traditionalists, frankly, are diverting is the wrong word, are shifting their attention to other things outside of arts and culture. And that's not to say that arts and culture doesn't remain an important consideration, but I think that all studies are showing these shifts. And so finding footing for organizations that don't have massive endowments to kind of undergird moments of crisis is a hard thing to do. And so a lot of our attention, I think, is often looking at how to think about funding as it evolves.
Don't you wish Leonard Hanna were back?
Sure.
Sure.
I think that the value of science and the value of knowledge right now is being challenged. And I think that that is making people have a variety of emotions, especially think about being a collections manager or a curator and spending your entire life looking at one specific thing that may unlock and think about disease or something to do that will have an impact on all of us and our health, and think about having that funding taken away. And what I'm the most concerned about, it's really not the short-term challenge, because in January, when we found out that we may not have some of the federal grants, over $2 million at stake, we did a run to the bank. We all got together and we filed what we needed to do, and we had most of that reimbursed. And I've met in a room with the curators and the scientists, and I've said short term, we're going to figure this out. But what I'm worried about the most is the long-term consequences to arts and culture in general, and about learning. And we are going to have to make a decision as a society of what we want to invest in. And sometimes those investments are long-term. And when you are responsible for over 5 million objects that tell the story of life, 80% of those objects that tell the story of life here in Northeast Ohio, and you don't know when they're going to reveal something that's really important for humanity, that is very scary to think about, the long-term consequence of not allowing field scientists to discover and not supporting basic science, because basic science is the reason why we're all in this room, because I think we're all over 50, and the average lifespan from the time we were in caves until the time of the Civil War was about 35. And now that has expanded. And it has expanded because of science.
Aaron, I was just going to say, you are dealing, you're dealing with kids, and it's Stop the Hate, and you're dealing with diversity in a big way at the Maltz Museum. It's a Jewish museum, but it's a museum for everybody.
That's right. We're a museum that uses the American Jewish experience to look at diversity, look at building bridges, looking at opportunities for connection. challenges are great in front of us as we're engaging in some of these difficult conversations. Funding, of course, is fundamental to that. Even if you don't receive funding directly from the federal government, a lot of your partner organizations are losing their funding, and they're out there seeking dollars from philanthropists in town, from donors in town. So the competition for philanthropic dollars continues to go up. And you have to make a very strong case, and you have to make sure that you're articulating your worth in the community more than you have had to do before. Just because the competition's so fierce. We have an exhibition right now, and it's about the conditions at the border when you cross over, and the items that you have to give up. You're leaving your home. What are you going to take with you on this journey? And then as you come across the border, it gets taken away from you because it's either dangerous or it's non-essential. Those kind of conversations that we want to have really necessitate us working with many different organizations in town. We put together an advisory group to help us plan out programming, plan out outreach, and involvement in the community, engagement. But those organizations that we're working for are struggling as well. And that's where you really start to see it. Now, the Maltz Museum, we don't receive any federal funds. We do receive state and county funds. But our partner organizations, our schools, receive funds. So that it affects our programming, maybe not directly, but indirectly with the folks that we work with. So, of course, we all want to activate our mission every single day. We want to reach more and more audiences, and resources limit that.
Would each of you think that children are one of your main audiences when they come to the museum? Is that the focus on? You're looking at an older group of traditional museum goers. You have young people who are growing up in a new era of information. So let's talk about kids and museums and the importance to all of them.
I would say young people are not, they are a focus of our museum. We are not a museum that has deep youth focus constantly, in large part because it is somewhat difficult to program with schools when your program is constantly changing. But we are a great space for children because we are a space of open thinking. And we bring unfamiliar things and ideas and expressions, and children are usually the ones that are least fearful of it. So children are courageous in the face of the unfamiliar, and adults tend to immediately close down if they don't understand or if the entry point is a little bit cloudy. And we always jokingly say, you all have the language of art. You learned it before you could speak. It is line and color and form and texture, and you understand it. It's just we don't speak it every day. And so children in the space energize that conversation because they're not afraid to be wrong, and also there's no wrong. That's the irony, of course. But our work with children is often trying to demonstrate to adults how to approach the world with that open-minded curiosity, to connect with others through curiosity. And right now, there's literally nothing more important than our ability to learn how to connect with others through curiosity and question asking, because of the increasing polarity of our society and the ideas that people find it so hard to just talk with someone who may have a different way of seeing the world. And that is our job. So children play a huge role in that.
Yeah, a little side note on that, because your museum is on the spot where the triangle was, and the Jazz Temple was there once upon a time, and Winston Willis brought in all the best jazz players in the nation to come there, and the Jazz Temple was bombed. So
yeah, 1964.
So we're looking, sort of, Aaron?
Yeah, children are our primary audience. I would say we host school groups, like many of the organizations that you've had up here, every single day. We're at an important intersection where we're working with children who are in junior high and in high school. And we're trying to provide them with critical thinking skills, problem solving skills. We're trying to inform them on what happened in the past. And we're trying to build, again, bridges of understanding understanding and empathy with different communities. In a very polarized community where you get all your information from your social media, our children aren't seeing a full picture of history. They're not seeing the full picture of interactions within their own community. It is incumbent, I believe, for museums to engage with young folks, children, in these conversations and say, this is what happened. These are the objects, artworks, artifacts that were there at the time. This is your connection to the past. How does your past connect with other people's past? How do you understand what somebody else went through, and how can you understand your world a little bit better that way? There are very, very few things in this world that are black and white, and it's really working in the area of the gray and making sure that people are comfortable being in the gray and understanding multiple concepts at one time.
So the Natural History Museum is all about the 3D experience. And we typically, before we started ended our transformation, we had about 100,000 visitors a year, and about half of them were children. Since December 15th, we've had 250,000 visitors. And that's a lot. And it's been wonderful. But one of the things we did to prepare is that we did a national poll on science. And that national poll indicated that 90% of Americans want to learn more about science, but more than 50% feel as if they're falling behind, and they don't believe politicians, and they don't believe a lot of social media and what they read, and they are looking for authentic information. And so where are they looking? They're looking for experts, such as our curators. And so we have really created more lifelong learning programming. Last night, we had an author, Bonnie Garmis, Lessons in Chemistry. We had a Nobel laureate in chemistry a few weeks ago. We had Bill Nye. We're having Ira Flato in January. So those are definitely not for 7-year-olds. And we will continue to expand that. I know. Bill Nye, maybe. But he has such a fan base. It was amazing. But I do think, though, that we're all trying to create places where people are lifelong learners, and also that you're making good decisions about your own health and the health of the planet. We're not necessarily trying to create the 8-year-old who wants to be a scientist, although we welcome that. We want people who are going to make really good decisions for themselves and their families. And when they go in and they eat something, or they vote, or they do something else. And the other appealing thing, I think, about the Natural History Museum is we really appeal to every political party. It's a reflection of our board. We have throughout the political spectrum, and it's because everyone cares about having clean water, clean air for their families. It's maybe we all disagree about how we're going to get there, but we're open to all, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because clean water, clean air. We've talked about that with the other community parts, other museum people here, and it's incredibly important. Yeah, I'm looking at my other notes. Thinking, which one do I want to throw at you again? I was going to. This is a standard question. Evolving technologies, and particularly in terms of communication and presentation. And the question is, how have they affected your operation? And I'll throw into that they're traditionalists. I'm a little bit of a traditionalist too. This is what a museum is. But if you go to the virtual and you go to online, how is that affecting you? How are you using it in your museums?
Well, artists use emerging technologies often, and so we are constantly being confronted with multimedia works that push technology in unusual ways and push our ability to show that work in unusual ways because they require cutting edge projectors or some wild setup. We also have artists, amusingly, that will engage Jurassic technology in their work, which is equally hard to use, which is, technology from the 60s that no one knows how to plug in anymore, and none of the cords work, and so it does run the gamut. But in terms of communication and engagement, most of our audiences receive their information via social media, not even via email anymore. So we, have people on the team who are specifically expert in these platforms and in how to use them. We just last week launched a new media platform called Mocha Media, where we'll be putting out long-form artist video casts and podcasts and short-form interpretation. Because what we understand is we have an audience outside of Cleveland, and they may not be able to come on the ground, and so this is a way to share artist voices. But the fact remains, you need to be there. You need to experience art in person. There's a visceral human response to materials and objects with other humans that is very different than viewing something online. So despite the importance of showing the objects and the things that we're exhibiting through our website, the goal is on-site or in-person engagement, whether it be at MoCA or somewhere else, because we understand that is where actually the magic happens. And I think we all know that during COVID, Zoom was helpful, but it was also incredibly hard because you couldn't feel the energy of the people in the room. You couldn't feel the energy of the conversation. And so it became this very kind of vacant experience in some ways. And so we are about how to nurture your soul, and that actually is part of your body. So you have to use it. So we do prioritize that too.
When I was teaching by Zoom, some of my students would disappear periodically, wondering what happened. Anyway, here. We're just doing this in a linear way, so anybody can jump in if they want to.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that people really yearn for the authentic. I think that they want to see the actual fossil. They want to see the actual brushstroke. They want to see the artifact that comes from history. And if you lead with the content, if you lead with the authentic, and you interpret with technology, then you're probably getting to the right space, and that's how to use technology. But if you're using technology for technology's sake, and that's your big wow bang, you're probably doing something wrong. We have interactive biographies at the Malta Museum where we were able to preserve a Holocaust survivor's story, Stanley Bernath. And it's an older technology, but it was a process of asking him over 1,000 questions, putting it into an algorithm, and then allowing people to ask questions of that algorithm, and then to actually hear in Stanley Bernath's own voice his response. What was your experience in the ghetto? What was your experience in the concentration camp? Why did you come to Cleveland? What's your favorite color? Now that is preserving history. It's authentic because it's straight from Stanley. It is his experiences, but he uses technology to bring that to life today because unfortunately, Stanley is no longer with us. But his story can still live on through this use of technology. So lead with the content and have the infrastructure, the technology help explain what you're doing.
So there are 88 counties in Ohio, and we serve 84 of them, especially in southeast Ohio. We serve states and all over the world, Inuit tribes. And one of the things that in poorer places, they do not have a health teacher. So we are able to provide that through our distance learning program. So with budget cuts, a lot of schools can't come to the museum. So that is one opportunity where technology has really helped. But I agree completely about the authentic experience. The reason why everyone loves Happy when they come into the museum is that 60% of that dinosaur is real, which is unheard of. And that sense of coming in and seeing that and hearing the story of how 4 Cleveland teenagers were given dynamite and said to go out west and find a dinosaur, and they sure found a dinosaur. And to tell that story, that's a great Cleveland story. That's about us. That's about, the land, and telling, that that authentic experience and making people feel proud of those stories. I think that's why museums and spaces are important. But on the other side, every time we invest in technology, and I was born under the wrong computer star. Everyone will attest to that. But I know that investment is only good for a year or two, and then you're going to have to make another investment. We've made significant investments in our staffing and in technology, knowing that those will be obsolete in a few years, but we also feel as if we have to deliver these services. So it does take out a chunk of our operating budget in order to do that.
Yeah, it's and you've got Lucy too. I was thinking.
Oh yes, Lucy. And my favorite thing
and
is
Balto
to see
as well,
yes,
right?
is we actually have families that on especially their daughter's birthday, they will come to the museum and measure themselves against Lucy. And that's just such a great story. And then on Mondays, we allow dogs to come to work because I'm crazy about dogs. And it's a really great way to help our staff. And, we're not open on Mondays, but I take my dog to work, who's the worst behaved dog. I just mentioned this last night, but she loves Balto, and she slinks up to Balto. And even Bonnie Garmis last night, she wanted to see Balto. That was her favorite object in the museum. So we have these beloved objects that are unique to the story of Cleveland.
Yeah. So when can I bring my cats in?
Oh, I know.
I agree, John. I agree. I'm there.
Well, I would be open to that. I would be open to that. But cats are, you don't really know what they're going to do. So dogs are a little more predictable.
Although, can I just say, I had an idea, and I want somebody to do this. We couldn't make it work. We had this idea about doing a campaign around the importance of slow looking, which is, taking your time, letting it sink in, moving past that point where you want to move on. And the idea was, can we get the zoo to bring a sloth to the gallery and just have it just meandering at its pace? And sloths are not travel animals, they told us. We did try. We reached out, and the Zoological Society said, despite what you might think with the smile, they're not great social animals in that way. So we couldn't do it, but I still feel like someday there will be one sloth that we can make that happen.
Oh gosh. The toy question I have here is, in all the things in your museum, okay, and it's going to be tough because you have rotating things and they don't stay there. What's the favorite item? What's the most important item for you? It's a tough thing, You've got 5 kids. Which one's the most important? Well, you can't do that. But what's the item that stands out for you?
Okay, well, personally, I'll say personally, and then, we have a lot of important objects. We lead really the world in the story of human origins and where we came from. And so that story and the story that we're all from Africa and that race is a social construct is really an important story, I think. And we've had remarkable legacy of having curators who have brought worldwide recognition to this region. But I have to be honest that my favorite object is a necklace that is tourmaline and diamond, and that it was Mrs. Wade's. Jephthah Wade gave it to his wife, and it is pink, and it's absolutely stunning. You can see it in the visitor hall. And she wore it to the coronation of Tsar Nicholas II. And we have one of the top 10 collections in the country of gems. And so I have to say, looking at the Cartier, ring we have downstairs, and it fits me perfectly, 4.5. And, no, they watch me a lot. I always tell someone if I'm going to steal anything, it's going to be the Cartier ring. And when I walk out, I'm willing to take, the penalty for it. But I'm going to steal something big, like the jewelry. But we have those objects that tell those stories. I think it's amazing to me, that whole story of geology, that those beautiful objects come, and that story as well.
Okay. Well, I won't tell anybody.
Well, it's a difficult question because a lot of things are coming to mind to
Yeah.
me. I think in our Judaica galleries, some of the very first stamps from Israel really moved me because these were the very first government documents that were put together in a basement before there was even announced what the name of the country was going to be. I mean, that's incredible. But what I'm mostly moved by is, and this is a plug for Rose Ironworks. Rose Ironworks, their work is so gorgeous. It is Cleveland. It is Cleveland is Cleveland is Cleveland proud. The Cleveland Museum of Art has their beautiful Rose Ironworks gate. We have a few of the works from Rose Ironworks, but it really talks about the contributions of the Jewish community in Cleveland and helping build a new city, helping build a new community. And not to mention the family from the Rose Ironworks are just a wonderful family. And they'll pick up the phone when you give them a call. And if you have any question, they're happy and proud to answer it. So that and maybe the Superman sketch, because that's really cool to have that there. We have so much Cleveland history. Our main core experience is called an American Story. It is about the Jewish Northeast Ohio experience. So all throughout our galleries, and we're not a collecting institution. We use all of our works come from the Western Historical Society, and they're all beloved. So. I'm not going to. I'll choose Rose Ironworks. But
Rose Ironworks, yeah. You've got a great person in Sean Martin who does double duty at the
very
Historical
best,
Society
yes.
of the Mall. Yeah, it's just, yeah.
So we don't have a collection, which means every 6 months I get to pick something new because all the other stuff has gone, which is exciting. Right now, I will say, we are hosting the Dresses from Progressive's Campus One installation by Beverly Sem. So if anyone had been in Campus One of the Progressive building, there are 4 dresses. The top is crushed velvet and then chiffon, and they are roughly 40 feet tall. They're about a size 27X. I don't know. They're ridiculous. And they're installed in our Gund Commons, and so they sweep from the ceiling to the floor. They look like columns. And one of the dresses has extra long arms. And I was an intern at Progressive for a summer when right as Toby Devon Lewis was retiring. And Toby was a very important person to MoCA. She actually started in 1972 as a director of education when we were just becoming a nonprofit. And so I love to look at the dresses and imagine that they are our 3 founders and Toby with the long arms. So it's Marjorie Talalay, Nina Sundell, Aggie Gund of blessed memory as she recently passed, and Toby Devon Lewis, all in their magnanimous wonder overseeing, the institution for the time that we have the dresses. So it's a really special installation right
That's
now.
cool. So what would you like to do next? What is something that you would want to get into MoCA that you've been struggling to get in, or what's your desiderata, so to speak?
Well, I would say actually anything that is just sort of completely immersively transformative in the space is what tends to be most resonant. But I'm actually quite interested. We're talking to a few partners about doing some very creative installations outside of the building, like in other spaces in Cleveland that are surprising. And so there's a project that could be on the horizon that will recast an environment that many people know from history, but it will be entirely different. So those are the projects that are the most exciting. When artists enter a space and make it something completely different, and then suddenly you understand its history or its architectural presence differently.
Of course, this is not going to reflect on MoCA, but one of the questions I asked is the importance of earned income to your museums through the gate. So if you can talk about that, you've mentioned already that it rises and falls, but I'm not asking for a percentage, but how important is that?
It's significantly important, and it's an area that the Maltz Museum really wants to lean into. Many of the museums, as they're designed, are designed to host events, and you get a fair amount of funding from people renting out your space, and it's a great opportunity for people to have their event in a very unique environment. We haven't really done that too much at the Maltz Museum. because our rotations are so quick, we don't really have the space for it, but we're starting to lean into that. Our store generates significant revenue for us, but I'd like it to be twice the size. And our gate also helps us, and membership. Earned revenue is an important aspect of what we do, and we need to lean into it a bit more as other sources of funding are disappearing.
So I would say, there's earned revenue and there's contributed revenue. And I want to talk a little bit about our endowment, because this is where, when you have an old institution and you have founders that believed in what they called the diffusion of knowledge, that knowledge is to be shared. It's not just an academic exercise. They make big investments. And I have the privilege of leading an institution where we have a very generous endowment that covers about 50% of our operating. But we also need philanthropy. And I have a very talented philanthropy team, the leader here, Melissa Santee's here, my chief philanthropy officer. And we need to talk about the value of coming to the museum every single day, because it's not just the annual fund, it's that endowment. So it's kind of like the difference in all of you who exercise. The cardio is great, but you've got to lift those weights as you age in order to maintain a strong bones and health. And that's what the endowment provides in good times and in bad. That income, and about 20% of our income is which comes through tickets. We're seeing more, of course, with our new spaces. We had a great mitzvah about 3 weeks ago, 250 people. It was fantastic. So a lot of wonderful spaces that we have now, and we'll see what we do with earned revenue. But, for all of us, and we have to make these decisions that are really tough right now. It's not an easy time to be a CEO. Of arts and culture, because we want to look at the long term, but there are all these short term challenges that come up in our days. And so, running it, people say, well, you're running it like a business. Well, and that is a criticism. First of all, I've never spent a day in a real business. But we're always trying to show value. That's the most important thing, is to show impact. We've had 47 years of balanced budgets. That's really important to our board and to the culture at the museum, so that when you make an investment at the museum, you're making an investment that is worthwhile. So that's how the mindset. But that's the hardest thing, is really wanting to think long term, but all of these short term things come up. All of us can share, challenges that all of a sudden someone comes in, whether it's a bomb threat, believe it or not, or all of these things that you would never expect, the safety of our visitors, security, those things that I think 30 years ago no one was thinking about.
That's a good point, because we haven't brought it up yet in prior discussions here, and that is security in the museum, not only for the objects or whatever's there, but just people misbehaving, to use the term. And,
security is a major concern for us, for our staff, for our visitors. We are constantly doing threat assessments. We're doing trainings. We're very fortunate to be on the campus of the Federation, and we share their Federation security, which is so important to us. We get threats. There's a lot of folks out there that don't like us. And we have to be very diligent on that. But that's a large expense. The cameras are a large expense. The security guards throughout our galleries, the presence of patrols, monitoring our websites to make sure that they don't get hacked for ransomware. I mean, these are the things that you don't really fundraise on, and that's where the endowment really comes in. It's very hard to say to somebody, would you like to donate to help support my my antivirusware, or or to put a camera up in the lobby. People don't get really excited about having a camera named after them. But an endowment,
That's a thing. Let's start that, though.
Yeah.
Let's really start that.
Well, that and parking garages. If anybody wants to like name a parking garage, that would be really cool, because that does not happen. But it's a large expense, and that's where unrestricted giving and endowments really help backfill that, because who would have thought that we'd be investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in security every single year just to protect our institutions and our community that come to it?
I'll sort of address kind of the flip side of how we've approached it, knowing that surveillance and security is important and also sets a tone that is sometimes really difficult for visitors who don't want to feel like they're surveilled when they're in a museum. And so at our 50th anniversary in 2020, we shifted to an engagement guide model where our staff in the gallery are trained as more like docents, and their presence is really for support of the experience and less so for securing the objects, which of course is their job. But what I've jokingly said is I've worked at MoCA for 21 years. We've had three insurance claims on objects, and it wouldn't have mattered if there had been 10 guards in the room. The person was gonna do the thing because they were just gonna do it, and unless you were holding them, they weren't, and it wasn't even an angry act, it was a stupid act, right? They just stepped on the work. So I prioritize, like, it's about the feeling of welcome and support in the galleries, which for us are the most vulnerable spaces. It's the space where the stuff is the weirdest and people are gonna have the hardest, strongest feelings, and they need people there to be like, hey, I'm here if you want to talk. I know, like, let's answer some questions. Like, what do you think? The other thing that happens at MoCA that we've been very attentive to is, based on our location, we have a lot of people who are dealing with mental health crises, who are homeless, and they're coming into our institution for help. And so really working with UCPD, which is a great community-centered police department, and Magnolia Clubhouse and other mental health service organizations to understand how to support those people in a way that isn't starting with the police and a call and just a removal, and really trying to help them in the ways that we can as a small museum with a very tiny staff. And so our security team is trained in that. We emphasize the importance of caring for anyone walking through the door, regardless of why they're there, as much as we can. So I think there's also the side of the revenue that's, the money that's spent to help ensure that your staff can deliver the best quality work, and sometimes that is not what you think it is. Sometimes it's my security coordinator helping a homeless person get to a shelter. It's not, making sure our cameras are working, although they have to do that too.
Yeah. So we're about at the hour, but I have one other question, and that is, looking forward, what do you really see for the future of your museums? And I know it's a tough question. I'm having a hard time to articulate it, but what's the thing you want to see in the future? More growth, a different exhibit, or what's the most important thing for you?
One of our most important programs that we do is the Stop the Hate program. It's now 18 years that we've been doing this program, and this is working with high schoolers and junior high students to think about something that has impacted their lives, and for them to write about it, for them to sing about it, for them to write a poem about it, to get it off of their chest, but also for the possibility of winning some scholarships. But that's around 50,000 children have engaged in that program so far. We want to reach further and deeper, but I also want to make sure that everybody who comes into the museum can interact with that. I would love to have a Stop the Hate interactive lab that we're working on right now, the concepts of it, where you can come on a Sunday, you can see what the children have responded to, you can see what they've written, you yourself can contribute to that conversation, and you could also help us decide what our next prompts and what our next season is going to look like when it comes to Stop the Hate. I want to activate it not just for a limited group of people, but I want to activate it for the whole community. So we're really excited about that opportunity.
So we have a beautiful facility, thanks to our friends at DLR who are here with me today. But I do want to say it's what goes on inside the building. It's the people and the programs, and making sure that we can retain our talent, especially with our science core team, and thinking about the future of collections. 5 million objects, hard to maintain. Every single day we have to think about that, how we tell that story. I think that's the future for the Natural History Museum, focusing on the people and the programs and being able to let everyone be so aware of all of the work that we do. And it's a very complicated place. I mean, we have a curatorial team, we have programming, we have all kinds of things going on, and trying to explain that in the future, and always thinking about how we serve science.
So MoCA, we just had a staff retreat, or a senior leadership retreat, and we were talking about how MoCA is a place of rambunctious thinking on complex ideas. Mm-hmm. And the way we do that is through art, and we are always in a venture culture mindset. So we are always trying to be right at the edge, pushing things forward. And it matters, frankly, to Cleveland's cultural capital. Like, we deliver a kind of innovation that matters to the sophistication of the city's mindset. And so we are unafraid of change. And so I would say what's coming in the future for MoCA is endless evolution. So the exhibition, sure, but the behaviors, you mentioned earned revenue, like, we are tackling how to really kind of turn over a lot of new ways to behave, because the old stuff's just not working anymore. Yeah. And we have the ability as a nimble organization to experiment and pilot in ways that others maybe can't. Mm-hmm. So that's exciting. And I have a team that is, like I said, they're courageous and they're creative and they're strategic. So I think our 60th anniversary is coming around the bend in 2028. The 15th anniversary of the building is in 2027, which is wild. DLR, thanks also for the Westlake Reed angle on our building. So there's a lot of anniversaries coming up, but we're going to use those as springboards to the future. So there's exciting things coming up, always something new, of course, to experience, including some information outside if you want to pick it up.
Thank you. We're ready for your questions now.
Andrea. Thank you so much for being here. I've really enjoyed this series. I'm not a Cleveland native, and it's been such a pleasure to learn so many new things about the city that's been our home since 2018. So this is more of a lighthearted, fun question, but let's pretend you all go into work Monday morning and there is a big anonymous check, lots of zeros. What would you do with it?
I would make the museum free, completely free for everyone. But I would also say, just because you make it free doesn't make it welcoming. So I would also make it free, but also have that engagement strategy that Megan was talking about. So important.
I think similarly, it's something that the Maltz Museum is looking into, making our galleries and our exhibitions free of charge, but also really expanding our Stop the Hate program. Right now it's busting at the seams, and we just need that little bit more to get it to its next level. So I think a big check would make our education people really excited.
I would FaceTime my board chair and go to the liquor closet and get out our best bottle of champagne and celebrate with our staff. And then I would deposit it straight into our endowment, which would allow us to undergird so many regularly occurring exhibitions and allow us to amplify the resources we can give to artists to deliver on their dreams inside the building at 11400 and in other places in Cleveland. And also, if you want to be that angel to deliver that check, my address is 11400 Euclid Avenue.
Well,
Hi. So one thing that all three of your institutions have in common that you've alluded to a little bit, but maybe you could speak to more, is your very unique architecture. So could you talk about how your architecture informs what you do?
So Jerusalem stone doesn't really hold up well in the winter, as it turns out. It's really fragile, but it is a beautiful building. I think it really gives a sense of location where you're at. It from the walls, from the color of the floors, it really gives you a sense of environment and space. So I'm really delighted with the architecture of it. I do wish, if you've driven down Richmond Boulevard, you can't see it. We're kind of down. I would like to build on top of it. Again, if anybody wants to write a check, we can move up. I'd love to get a classroom in there, but I'd like for it to be a lot more visible because you kind of have to turn a corner to see the architecture. But it is very beautiful.
So our building is wild. She's a handful. She's definitely a woman, and she's very loud, and you can't really ignore her almost anywhere. And there are some great assets. The building is endemic of our mission. It is always changing. The exterior faces in and out, depending. And so anytime you look at the building, it's different because someone's walking by or the clouds are moving. And then the interior is this astonishing color of blue, which was essentially selected by Julian Stanzak, which is a wonderful little tidbit. We had like a color weekend when Farshid Musavi, our architect, decided she wanted to paint the entire interior a color because everyone was shell-shocked. And Julian was part of that conversation. This is like, I don't know, 2009 maybe. And he said, as long as you read dark before blue, like that's your goal. And then he helped to pick the color. So there is some amazing aspects of the building. There are things when we build it again, we'll totally do differently. More windows, it's you can't see inside. And for a program that is itself unfamiliar and challenging, to not be able to see inside can also be a psychological barrier. So we've tried to address a lot the idea that that just get in. And we promise, like, you'll be great. It'll be great. You have enough, like, but the building, whew, like, she's part of it. Yep. She's always part of it.
So our whole idea was to showcase nature. Nature in, nature out, and the beautiful windows that show that when you're walking in University Circle, you can see dinosaurs. And please, please see it at night because it's spectacular. Every single day, no matter what the weather, I go in the front of the building because it's very inspiring. And it's really an ode to the Great Lakes and the whole concept of water. It is the only museum in its category to attain LEED Platinum certification. That's leadership in environmental engineering and design. And, you know, our architects are here. They've put blood, sweat, and tears into this. But we are also one of the finalists for the Prix Versailles Award, which is among the most beautiful museums for 2025, one of 7. So I get to go to Paris in December. It's a hard job. Those are...
She just got back from London.
Oh, okay. Well, that was we have the Wildlife Photographer of the Year right now. We're the only museum in America that has it. So if you come and see it, it's the last few days. But, you know, we're really proud that there is this sense now of welcoming, and we've used native plants. And really, it's about telling our story about this region. And it couldn't have been built anywhere else on the planet Earth. We're really proud of that. And we hope that all of our visitors are so proud. And we're seeing visitors from all 50 states and Puerto Rico who want to learn more. So we feel really good about the building right now. It was a great partnership. Yeah. You know, I'll never build, I said this to someone, I'll never build another building again. And they said, well, now you're an expert. But I don't know about that. But I do think that part of our success, if we can call it, is that we had really great partners who were honest with each other, and I got out of their way and let them do their work.
Yeah, I keep wondering what Jeff the Wade would say if he were around today, where his zoo was once located. Yeah.
Well, that's true.
It's incredible.
I have 2 questions, one for the entire group. I just read that a consortium of not-for-profits have develop sort of the NATO version of not-for-profits, that if one entity is attacked, they will support each other against government ideological attacks. I'm wondering if any of you have contemplated that or would contemplate that as a way to share resources, social media networks, the like, so you're not being attacked individually. And a specific question about the Natural History Museum. I'm taking another course here on the history of indigenous people in Ohio. And the professor has reiterated repeatedly that he's finding it difficult to do archaeological studies and to do educational displays of artifacts because of recent federal legislation protecting the sacred nature of indigenous artifacts. I'm wondering if you've given any thought as a museum to how to address that, if you're going to address it, so that maybe respect the rights and the beliefs of indigenous people not to be exploited, but at the same time still have an educational process for this history.
So I think we already kind of have NATO without like talking about it. I can't believe how collaborative all of us are together. And when we have a problem, if something happens, we text each other. And there was an issue that happened about a month ago where we all are standing strong. And I think that the voters of Cuyahoga County have overwhelmingly voted that they believe in arts and culture. And I take that very seriously as a steward of those funds. And I think all of my colleagues would say that as well. So when something happens, we work together, whether it was through COVID, we all had the same policies. Even though we were attacked by some about those policies. But I think we all really do stand together. It's remarkable. I don't think it's any other city in the country can talk about how we are all, we're not just colleagues, we're friends. And I think that's so important. And we talk about challenges that we have. As far as the Natural History Museum, I'm lucky enough to have curators, first of all, that are experts on anthropology, but we comply with all of the federal laws on NAGPRA. But we made an effort that we will showcase no human remains in the museum. A lot of other museums have done that. So we are actually working with tribes right now. You know, burial is very important with Native Americans, and we're working with them. We actually conserve over 13,000 acres in Ohio, and it's an important part of the natural history story here in Ohio. We're working with different tribes about how they would like to bury remains, and it's been a very positive experience. You know, the Ohio History Center actually has the largest collection of Native American remains in the country. And so this is something that we have been working in a very positive way. And our partners at Case Western, because some of those some of the remains are legal title at Case Western. We are only stewards of making sure that that collection is maintained. So we're always working with partners.
Yeah, we actually, at the Historical Society, had to return some remains because...
And we do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And actually, one of our curators was invited to the ceremony.
Ceremony, yeah.
Yeah.
Our curator was in the ceremony for the return as well. It was
She
really
can't
quite
talk
moving.
about it, but it would be fascinating to hear. But
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being here. As a fellow nonprofit leader, your discussion around the challenges we face when it comes to funding certainly resonates. And you each used a word that deeply resonated, the word competition, value, and innovation. How do we in the nonprofit sector go about shifting this scarcity competitive environment that we often find ourselves in when it comes to our funding to be able to shift through innovation to an abundant environment where we're delivering the most value that we can as the nonprofits that we are in being able to help make a difference in our society?
So I'm gonna use an observational experience that I think just kind of points to what needs to start happening more. I was attending a panel done a few years ago by it wasn't Global Cleveland, but it was like the Center for Global Affairs, and it was downtown at the Hyatt, and one of the panels, and I'm talking about globally connected Cleveland, was about arts and culture. And I was sitting in the room. I wasn't on the panel. I know everybody who's on the panel. And I looked around, and everybody in the room were arts and culture leaders or artists. And I was like, wow, how exciting for us to talk to ourselves again. Maybe instead we should have a panel and a room filled with lawyers, bankers, arts and culture leaders, CEOs of companies, government officials, and workshop that intersection a little more. Because I think one of the problems is we kind of self-silo, and then we are, especially in the arts, we're dropping the word art world under my leadership at MoCA, and we're using art industry because even the word art world suggests this mystical, mythological place that you go to and nothing really happens and it's not important in the real world. Industry is a place where things are made and people have jobs and they deliver value. And so the language, the nomenclature, the way we present what we're doing as not just a nice leisure activity on the weekend, but like central to the health of our society and the ability of our city to find economic success and compete with cities around us like Pittsburgh and Columbus who are killing it in some of these ways. You know, we have to be more ingrained in those conversations, and it will take, I think, some civic leadership. It will take some private sector leadership to say, like, the model has to change. The amount of philanthropy that we rely on is unreasonable for a business. I mean, it's just unreasonable. You asked about earned income. Our ratio, I'll tell you, it's 98 to 2% earned revenue. Like, we're all contributed, which means I am constantly fundraising with individuals who have a lot of competing interests and values, and their decision to give money to the food bank and not MoCA, or to, you know, the cancer center and not MoCA is completely understandable. I could never be like, "Pa, who needs that?" You know, like, I get it, and also I know we matter. So it's that we have to change that model a little bit so that we are not all so reliant on the historical modalities of philanthropy, which are changing by each generation. It's just not the same. They're not giving the way their grandparents gave, and it's not bad, it's just different. Well, for us, I'd say we are looking very hard at how to enter the for-profit kind of markets, how to be differently engaged for our sector with the gallery system in our ecology, not Cleveland Gallery. I'm talking like the art industry gallery system that happens in New York and LA and Chicago and Berlin and Beijing, which are the conduits for the most of the money that's kind of generating, you know, in our industry. And so right now our relationship is this kind of delicate side position where we like do shows and we produce work and then they sell it and they get all the revenue and we maybe get a small gift. So, I mean, that's one example of like, can my peers set up a standard whereby if we're gonna deliver this much value to your artist and your gallery that you're gonna use to generate revenue, we also will get something back. And I have a colleague who left his position as a director and is now creating a fund for collectors to invest in that allow them to see returns on new commissions that will be held then sold, and the artist gets money, we get money as the producer, and the collector who's invested in the fund gets money. So these kind of innovations where we're actually using investment strategies and the strategies that corporations use to find, you know, we have to start playing that game better, frankly.
You know, there's an SMU study that shows what arts and culture gives to Ohio from an economic perspective. It's unbelievable. And comparing us to Cincinnati, and I did a little bit of this last night, but we really punch above our weight in arts and culture. We employ less people, but the economic output of that is far greater here than in Cincinnati. But if you go to Cincinnati, it is a priority of leaders to support arts and culture. And I'm not going to say anything about a football team in town, but I am going to say something about, you know, investing in 8 quarterbacks as opposed to having the leadership to say arts and culture is the key priority because it's an economic engine. It supplies jobs, it gives us tourism, it gives us other things. And at the end of the day, this is about leadership. And I'm not against the Browns, even though I am a Steelers fan. Although Joe Flacco really showed them last night in Cincinnati. But I will say that we have to get our priorities. And it's not an or, it can be an and in what those things are. But I do think that we can all speak. When I go to another city, even outside of the United States, people come up to me and they can't believe like our museum and our collection. It is world regarded. And yet when I'm here sometimes I'm challenged because I'm told by funders that we're really not on the priority list. And it's very hard and it's frustrating. And we want to spend more time on our programming because the great museums in Europe, they focus on programming because they have the opportunity to not spend all of their time on philanthropy. And so that is the challenge.
Great insight thus far. A question I have is, what are strategic decisions that you can make now to ensure that your institutions remain great institutions 50 and 100 years from now?
You have to be good stewards for the money. It's just the most important thing is that all of you trust us with the money, because in 100 years, that's the only way that this is going to stay. And we really think a lot about the people who started the museum and reading why they started the museum. They started the Musical Arts Association, the Art Museum, and then us. And it was about that diffusion of knowledge, that knowledge was to be shared and not keeping everything in a little box. And I think that that's really important, to be good stewards of the assets that we have.
And also to be able to express the ROI. And it's a very business term, I know, but you have to think about how you're communicating with the people who are giving you the money so that they know that you're activating in a way that meets their needs and your needs. And articulating that over, you cannot articulate that enough. You have to say it over and over again. This is how many people we touched. This is how many schools we reached out to. You can never stop making those comments, and you have to work at it every single day. So I don't know if there's a magical bullet that you could just use that would set you up for 50 years, because it's every single day you have to work at it.
I would just quickly say the composition of the board and the staff right now is really important, and thinking about what kind of leadership you're surrounding yourself with and how I'm empowering my team to be leaders in every single role that exists, whether it be the most entry level to my position. Like, everyone has to be aggressively demonstrating excellence and leadership and innovation in their roles, because it's going to take all of that to keep things strong.
We're going to take one final question over here. I'm not the kind of person who asks questions, this kind of stuff, but there's all these magazines and stuff out there, and you are looking online and you get to a paywall and it's like, oh, I shouldn't have gotten a subscription to the New Yorker because now I can't read this one, and the Wall Street Journal or whatever. And then Apple came up with this thing. You pay one monthly fee. It's not hugely small, but you pay one monthly fee and you have access to all these newspapers and magazines. And I thought that it's the same way with the museums here. Like, which ones are you going to be a member of this year? And oh my gosh, it's just stressful. And so what if you guys had one fee and you belong to all the museums, and on any given day, oh, I'll go to this one. And piggybacked on that, when my son was a preschooler at the Cleveland Music School settlement, they had a grant from the Smithsonian, and there was a woman, and she organized this thing, and once a month the children went to a different institution. But the whole previous month, they prepared for that visit in school, learning a little bit of this and that. And I'm just thinking, if a whole bunch of people thought, wow, I can just give this much annually or monthly, and I belong to all the museums, you'd have this excess money to hire somebody to be that connector between the schools and all the museums.
So we have a Circle Pass program at University Circle that people can do, similar to what you're talking about, but great idea to explore expanding that. And we also have, because of the Mandel Foundation, we have 2 community educators who go out into the community to do what you're talking about. But that takes philanthropy as well. But I agree with you that, the more that we can collaborate, the better it is. And we do a lot together, but new ideas are always welcome.
All right. Great questions. Great questions. So let's thank the group. Let's thank the group. You know, something comes to mind for me. How many of you know David Mamet or like some of his plays? Are you familiar with David Mamet? Great, of course, right? And there's a famous acronym in one of his plays that was also translated into a movie where he talks about ABC. That's a line. Always be closing. If you know Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, right? So that came to mind, right? It's like, you know, we need to support these Cleveland cultural institutions. We have to support them. You know, we're in the same boat at Siegal. You know, we feel we provide a very valuable service to our students, our patrons, and we all need to be supported. So if there's anything I'll leave you with after this series, it's to be cognizant of the fact that, you know, we need to support each other. You know, my dad used to always say to me, come to the dinner table with something besides an appetite. And if you think that through, it's very meaningful in life in general. So having said that, I'll let this group of folks move on with Andrea. And for those of you that signed up for the reception, it'll be in room 121. Yeah, so again, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Yep. And stay tuned, as I stated earlier, stay tuned for the next series that we have. I may have preempted it by talking about David Mamet and, you know, plays and things like that. But we'll have another group of great institutions coming up and subsequently, and then after that. So we're trying to make this really a series, but keeping it at the level that you see it at now. We're not going to water this down. So thank you very much.